Welcome back, you guys. I've got two talking points to discuss for today. For the first one, I'm here to speak about Timo Werner and give my reasons as to why I think he has lost his scoring touch in front of goal. For the second talking point, I'm going to be discussing Mason Mount and how he's become this season's new creative king and how he's transformed himself from last season. But before I get into anything, you guys, let me get one quick plug out the way first. The sponsoring Blue Lines TV. Now, eToro is a global investment platform with over 16 million registered users, and they sponsor a host of Premier League clubs. But anyway, during this lockdown, eToro wanted to understand how fans are coping watching their teams play from home. The results came back, and the results were a bit meh, with 75% revealing that they aren't happy watching their teams play from home, with 73% revealing the reasons as to why. Now, these top three reasons are pets, life admin, and people knocking on the door during games. Now, I don't know how some people run their households, but that could never happen with mine. You could never ever see me answering the door for anyone during a game. But jokes aside, you guys, if anyone's been curious and interested in wanting to invest, but you feel like you just don't have the time, eToro has the perfect tool for you. It's called the CopyTrader tool. And what this basically means is that you get to copy and follow the leading performing investors on the platform, meaning that whenever they make an investment, you make the same one automatically at no additional cost. So honestly, for you man that have been curious for a while, this is the perfect time to learn. Click on the link in the description to learn and find out more. Now for the first point, I want to discuss Timo Werner and his form in these past few months, because I think we can safely say that Werner, he's missing his finishing boot. He's not finishing everything or even anything, and is this time now to be worried as a fan base? Because we've been here before. We've seen players like Torres, we've seen players like Morata. They have a bit of form for a bit, it escapes, it vanishes, and it never comes back. Is Werner going to potentially fall in that same bracket? For me, you guys, I have to say, not at all. I'm going to give my reasons as to why, and of course, I'm going to be curious to read everyone's comments below. But for me, I have to understand why Werner was first signed in the first place. Now, last season our issues were we created so many great opportunities. The stats from last season back this up. However, our finishing boots weren't there. We weren't taking advantage of the opportunities we were creating, and this was clearly something that had to be rectified using the market. So in steps Timo Werner, and one of the main reasons as to why Lampard has always been a massive fan. Why Lampard is one of Werner as his leading forward for a while is because Lampard sees Werner as that player that can convert those opportunities into goals. Now, how does Werner do this exactly? That is due to how Werner plays, and that's how Werner times his runs inside the box. Now, there's been a lot of talks about Lampard using Werner out of position. I don't personally see it like that. I think just because his position is wide does not necessarily mean that he is playing as a winger. I think in games where he looks like he is playing as a winger, that means that as a team, we aren't playing well. And I'm going to explain why, because to understand Werner, we have to understand how we create opportunities. And I think one club that is a perfect example and model of what we're trying to do is Liverpool. When they play, they like to create an overload down one side of the flank. Once they concentrate a certain area, they then make some quick passes to the opposite flank where they have their Robertsons and their Manes, overloading that area, having the space and freedom to play in, disrupting the opposition's defense, and of course creating clearer cut opportunities through on goal. I think if Werner was really flopping, we would never ever see him get in his favourite positions. That's essentially the principles in which we're trying to use Werner to get the best out of him, because it's been known for a very long time, Werner, we know he is all about his pace. And to get the best out of that pace, you have to create space for him to move into and operate. So now that we understand this, anytime a team defends very compact with a low block very well, if our passing down the right hand side isn't good enough, if the passing's slow, if we're not creating and moving the defense down that side, it means that we can't quickly move the play to the opposite flank. And if we can't quickly do that, it means that we can't catch out the opposition. Basically means that we can't catch out the opposition's defense down that side. So from a fundamental tactical point of view, Werner is still achieving in this area. And I think one stat that highlights this is his goal contributions. Now, against West Ham, even though he had a ton of great opportunities to score a goal, he never got on the score sheet. But due to that high volume of runs inside the books, we were bound to profit off something eventually, and he got an assist setting up Tammy Abraham. So in the end, his efforts weren't entirely all in vain. At the same time, as fans, we expect more from our players. For me though, can we expect everything right now from Werner? Considering that of course he is young, considering that he's come to a new country, new club, new league, and of course his role is slightly different to how he's been used at RB Leipzig. Is this a time to lose patience with Werner and give up on him? I don't think so. And I think one player in particular that Werner should look towards for inspiration is actually Mohamed Salah. When he was first signed by Liverpool in their first season, no one understood why they spent so much money, but Klopp had a game plan from time, and that game plan was to have Salah as that focal point in attack. And whenever I look at players like your Salahs, your Werners, your Sons, all these players' games from a tactical point of view are pretty similar to how a Cristiano Ronaldo would play. Just because Ronaldo is finding positions out wide does not mean he is playing as a winger, because we know those diagonal runs he would make inside the books to be that team's focal point. So in that sense, it's no different to how we want to use Timo Werner. It's just that it's going to take a bit more time. And the reality is, Werner is a great player. He's an incredible striker, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he is the perfect technical player. With more time, more experience, and playing alongside a higher caliber of player, he's only going to get better and improve. And in Salah's first season, did you see him holding the ball up against players and playing people in? Were you seeing any of the types of plays that we are now seeing in this current Salah compared to the Salah from 4 seasons ago? Most definitely not. Now, of course, creating the space for Werner is only part one of the solution. Part 2 is down to Werner, of course, taking advantage of these opportunities and scoring the goals. Now, that's going to take time. Strikers at this level, a lot of their finishing comes from form, confidence, and things like this. And in our past few games where we struggle to find Werner in great opportunities, I can imagine how that could slightly affect your mentality when you're through on goal. But considering that West Ham game, Werner was found in some of the positions he loves to be found in. He never got a goal, but he still got a goal contribution. For me, this tells me that, okay, when you use Werner in this way, give him some time, he'll get back to that form he showed at the start of this season. So that's my personal take on Werner. So now I'll move on to the second talking point. Now, I want to talk about Mason Mount. Mount, this season, playing in a deeper position as a number 8, is really transforming how everyone first perceived the player. I felt like last season, Mount got a ton of unfair criticism, which mostly came from people that had never really seen his game, didn't really know what he was about, and were purely judging him on face value, on how he was used from a tactical point of view from last season. Now, last season, Mount was heavily criticised for a lack of creativity, a lack of goals, etc, with creativity being the main focal point of all the criticism. However, the reality was just because Mount was playing in a 10 role or in a position on the field that is traditionally meant for 10s, does not mean he was used as a traditional number 10 playmaker. And the main reason for that, the main difference for this, was that Mount was always told to move inside the books. When you're moving inside the books, away from the build-up, then how can you create? How can you influence the game? You can't. The only influence that Lampard wanted from Mount playing in that role last season was to get goals and, of course, his defensive contribution in the final third, because we're a team that had to press from the front foot, we had to get better in these areas, and we needed better defensive support in the wide areas too. So insert Mason Mount, and for me, last season was pretty decent. Now, some guys might be thinking, Nini, that's Lampard's fault for using Mount out of position. However, is that really the fairest way to see things? I asked myself, okay, why could we not play 4-3-3 last season? And the clearest thing for me was that we had no N'Golo Kante to use consistently throughout all last season. If we did, as we saw last season in certain games where Gilmour played in that role, versus Everton, versus Liverpool, where Mount was playing as an 8 alongside Barkley, that's when we saw what he was really about. For people that have seen Mount playing since the youth days, his form this season was really no surprise because that's how he's always played his best football. And I do think that there is definitely a question in regards, because when you look at most of the best players in the world right now, when they first started their careers, how many different positions were they first playing? You know, and I think that's important, you guys, because that's how these guys learn and develop. With Mason Mount, when he left, he went to Vitesse, he played down the left flank and he improved from that. He then returns back to Derby alongside Frank Lampard playing as an 8, and then last season he had to play more as a Kai Havertz style of number 10 player. And to be honest, last season was the perfect education for Mount to get used to the intensity of the league, to understand what he has to do to become a better player and to work on other weaker parts of his defensive game. So I feel like sometimes when we judge young players, you can never ever judge them with such finality unless you know exactly what the hell you're talking about. Now, as I mentioned earlier with how Mount was used as a Kai number 10 instead of a traditional number 10, you know, he's away from the build-up play. So the big difference this season being that Mount is one of the guys to kickstart the build-up play. Now, he's always had incredible set-piece delivery. We got glimpses of this last season, especially that Leicester City game when he set up Rudiger with 2 assists. And this season in particular, his deliveries inside the box have been utterly outstanding. And to be honest, it kind of reminds me a bit of Frank Lampard and his delivery from those wide areas. So the fact that Mount is bringing such consistent quality from set pieces has really helped us out so much this season. I mean, and a lot of this comes from Mason Mount's excellent delivery and his ability to consistently find men inside that 6-yard box. Just like the way he puts that spin on the ball, the way it just evades the first man, and how it's just slightly, you know, out of reach for the goalkeeper to, you know, go into his area and collect. I mean, it's brilliant, and it's a skill that is only going to get better. But even looking at the stats, now that Mason Mount is playing in a deeper role, he now has more passes per game. He's now playing more long balls per game. He's playing at least 2 key passes per game, and his creative influence isn't just from the assists. It also comes from the pre-assists that he's setting up because he is heavily involved in our build-up play. And what is really interesting about this season is how Mount's creative play has outweighed his goal scoring contribution. He's only scored once in the Premier League and once in the League Cup. So again, this is just proof that Mount is 21 years old. He still needs a lot more time to fully become that player that we know he can be. And it's testament to why we have to remain patient with him and why we should have given him this patience from the start, because Mount always had the potential to be one of the best mids in the country. So I'm very happy to see how Mount can finally play in his best position. But at the same time, this doesn't take away anything from what he learned from last season, because at this age, it's still a learning experience, and the more learning you can do, the better you become at the end of the day. So there you guys, that was the talking points video for the day. I hope you guys enjoyed. Remember to like, comment and subscribe. I'm Nini FC, this is Blue Lions TV. I'll catch you guys later with some more videos.